In the vast tapestry of the galaxy, where countless civilizations have risen and fallen across millennia, one truth has remained constant. Every species knows their place in the cosmic hierarchy. The Zephyrians dominate through technological supremacy. The Karate rule with their psychic might. The massive Threnody crush opposition with sheer physical power. Each race understands their role, their limitations, their ceiling. Then came humanity. At first glance, humans appeared laughably weak. No natural armor like the Korati. No telepathic abilities like the Zephyrians. No imposing size like the Threnody. They were fragile, short-lived creatures who had barely mastered faster-than-light travel when they stumbled into galactic society. The Galactic Council welcomed them with the same patronizing smile they reserved for all lesser species, useful for menial labor, perhaps amusing as pets, but certainly no threat to the established order. For 50 years, humans played their assigned role perfectly. They took the jobs others wouldn't want. They settled the dangerous frontier worlds. They nodded politely when denied access to advanced technology or excluded from important decisions. The galaxy forgot about them, as it had forgotten about so many other unremarkable species. But the galaxy made a critical error. In their arrogance, the council members never bothered to truly study humanity. They never looked past the soft skin and fragile bones to see what lurked beneath. They never questioned why a species with no natural weapons had climbed to the top of their world's food chain. They never wondered what had driven these seemingly weak creatures to reach for the stars despite every disadvantage. They never realized that humanity's greatest strength wasn't what they possessed, it was what they lacked. While every other species in the galaxy had evolved with natural limits, built-in constraints that prevented them from pushing too far, humans had evolved something far more dangerous: the complete absence of a ceiling. Where others saw insurmountable barriers, humans saw interesting puzzles. Where others accepted defeat, humans found alternative solutions. Where others knew when to stop, humans simply didn't. The Council was about to learn that there's a reason apex predators rarely look dangerous until they strike. And after 50 years of being underestimated, dismissed, and patronized, humanity was finally ready to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of when pushed too far. This is the story of that revelation and how the balance of galactic power shifted forever in a single terrifying moment of recognition. The crystalline towers of the Galactic Council nexus stretched toward the binary stars of Centauri Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 1,000 worlds united under a single banner of supposed peace. Within the grand chamber at the apex of the central spire, representatives from the galaxy's most powerful civilizations gathered for what they believed would be a routine session of bureaucratic housekeeping. Council Prime Zethkarai of the Zephyrians adjusted his neural crown, the device crackling with barely contained psychic energy. His elongated skull bore the distinctive ridges of his species' evolution, each marking representing centuries of mental development that had elevated the Zephyrians to their position as the galaxy's technological masters. Around him, holographic displays showed the current state of their vast empire. 17,000 systems under direct control, trade routes spanning half the galaxy, and military fleets that could reduce entire planets to cosmic dust with a thought. Before we begin today's proceedings, Zethkarai announced, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I wish to address the recent incident involving the human mining operation on Kepler 442b. A ripple of what might charitably be called amusement passed through the assembled representatives. To the Council, human affairs rarely merited serious discussion. They were a curiosity at best, a nuisance at worst, but never a genuine concern. War Chief Thanador of the Korathi straightened his massive frame, causing the reinforced platform beneath him to groan under his weight. Standing nearly 4 meters tall and covered in natural bone plating that could deflect plasma fire, he represented a warrior culture that had conquered through pure might for over 2 millennia. His people believed in simple solutions. If something opposed you, you crushed it. If it couldn't be crushed, you found something bigger to do the crushing. The humans have been strip mining dilithium without proper authorization again, Thandor rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. My scouts report they've established 17 unauthorized facilities in the past month alone. Their operations show a disturbing lack of respect for established territorial boundaries. Sage Velteroth of the Threnodidae species unfolded her ancient limbs with deliberate care. As the eldest member of the council, her translucent skin held the wisdom of 800 standard years, and her people's longevity gave them perspectives that younger species couldn't comprehend. The Threnodidae had been part of the galactic community when most current civilizations were still crawling out of primordial oceans. "The humans have always been ambitious," she observed with the patience of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of species. "But ambition without wisdom leads to overreach. Perhaps it's time to remind them of their place in the natural order." Fleet Admiral Kithara of the Nexari Collective nodded agreement, her cybernetic enhancements gleaming as they processed thousands of data streams simultaneously. The Nexari had achieved perfection through the fusion of biological consciousness and artificial intelligence, creating beings of unparalleled efficiency and logic. They viewed the galaxy through the lens of optimization, seeing every interaction as a system to be streamlined. Resource allocation projections indicate that continued human expansion will create supply chain disruptions within the next decade, she reported with mechanical precision. Their current growth rate exceeds sustainable parameters by 312%. Immediate intervention is recommended to prevent systemic inefficiency. The truth was that none of them had ever bothered to truly study humanity. The initial contact reports, filed 50 years ago when Earth first achieved faster-than-light travel, described them in dismissive terms: a young species with no remarkable characteristics, possessed of average intelligence and below-average physical capabilities. They were categorized as Class D potential contributors, suitable for manual labor and basic resource extraction, but not candidates for advanced technological sharing or political inclusion. That assessment had shaped 5 decades of galactic policy toward humanity. Humans were given the jobs no one else wanted: mining operations on toxic worlds, terraforming assignments on barely habitable planets, and long-range exploration missions to sectors considered too dangerous or unprofitable for more valuable species. They performed these tasks with minimal complaint, showing the kind of stubborn persistence that the Council found useful but unremarkable. What the Council members didn't realize was that their routine assignments had been systematically building human capabilities in ways that traditional galactic powers had never needed to develop. While the Zephyrians relied on their psychic abilities and advanced technology, humans had learned to survive through pure ingenuity and adaptation. While the Korathi dominated through overwhelming force, humans had developed the art of making the impossible seem routine. While the Threnody drew upon centuries of accumulated wisdom, humans had learned to innovate at a pace that left other species struggling to keep up. The mining operations that Thandor complained about weren't just unauthorized, they were impossible. The locations where humans had established facilities were places where no other species could survive. Worlds with gravity that should have crushed human bones, atmospheres that should have been instantly lethal, radiation levels that should have prevented any form of life from functioning. Yet somehow, human miners were not just surviving in these environments, but thriving in them, extracting resources at rates that defied conventional understanding. "The solution is simple," declared Sub-Chancellor Rothman of the Void Confederation. His species had evolved in the cold darkness between stars, giving them an instinctive understanding of resource scarcity and territorial control. "We increase the tax levies on human operations by 30% and mandate that all new facilities require council pre-approval. If they wish to expand, they must do so within the established framework." The suggestion met with general approval. It was exactly the kind of bureaucratic solution that the council excelled at: maintain order through administrative burden, control expansion through regulatory complexity, and ensure compliance through economic pressure. It had worked with dozens of ambitious young species over the millennia, but Intelligence Director Quantala of the Shadow Syndicate raised a clawed appendage in what might have been concern. Her species had evolved as information gatherers, living in the spaces between other civilizations and surviving by knowing what others preferred to keep hidden. The Syndicate's network spanned the galaxy, and they had access to data streams that even the Council sometimes found surprising. "There's something the assembled representatives should be aware of," she said carefully. "Recent intelligence suggests that human capabilities may have been underestimated in our initial assessments." The chamber fell quiet. Quenthela rarely spoke during council sessions, but when she did, it was usually to share information that would change the fundamental assumptions of whatever discussion was taking place. "Explain," Zethkorai commanded. Quenthela activated a holographic display showing shipping manifests, resource allocation charts, and population distribution maps. Over the past 18 months, human settlements have increased their resource output by 400% while maintaining the same reported population levels. Their mining operations are extracting materials from locations that our geological surveys indicated were completely barren, and they're accomplishing this with technology that our assessments suggest should be completely inadequate for the task. War Chief Thanador dismissed the concern with a grunt. "Humans are clever with their little tools. It changes nothing. They remain physically weak and psychically blind. Any direct confrontation would end within minutes." "With respect, War Chief," Quinthala continued, "that assumption may be based on incomplete data. Intelligence operatives have observed human workers performing tasks that should require cybernetic enhancement or psychic amplification. They're carrying loads that should crush them, working in environments that should kill them, and solving technical problems that typically require team collaboration through individual effort." "You're suggesting that our initial species assessment was inaccurate?" "I'm suggesting that our assessment was based on observing humans in controlled, safe environments," Quenthela replied. "Recent data indicates that human performance characteristics change dramatically when they encounter situations that exceed their apparent limitations." The suggestion hung in the air like an undetonated weapon. For 50 years, the Council's policies had been based on the assumption that they understood every species under their jurisdiction. The idea that they might have fundamentally misunderstood humanity was not just surprising, it was potentially threatening to the entire foundation of galactic order. Fleet Admiral Cathara's cybernetic systems processed the new information at lightning speed. If intelligence reports are accurate, this represents a significant miscalculation in our species classification matrix. Recommended course of action: immediate comprehensive assessment of human capabilities under stress conditions. "Unnecessary," Zethkorai declared with the finality of supreme authority. "Even if humans are more adaptable than initially assessed, they remain a young species with limited resources and no significant military capability. They pose no threat to the established order. We will proceed with the increased taxation proposal and monitor their response. If they prove troublesome, more direct measures can be implemented." The vote was unanimous, as council votes always were when the most powerful species had already reached their decision. The human problem would be solved through the same methods that had maintained galactic order for 2,000 years. Economic pressure, bureaucratic control, and the implicit threat of force. As the representatives began to file out of the chamber discussing the details of implementation and enforcement, none of them noticed the small observation device that had been silently recording every word of their discussion. It was a piece of human technology, no larger than a dust mote and completely undetectable to standard security scans. The device finished its data collection and began the process of quantum transmission back to its point of origin. In a small office on the human colony world of New Geneva, Director Sarah Chen of the Colonial Intelligence Service reviewed the intercepted council session with growing concern. She had spent 15 years in intelligence work, and she knew the signs of an escalating situation when she saw them. The council was moving beyond mere contempt toward active hostility, and they were doing so based on assumptions about human capabilities that were 50 years out of date. Chen activated her secure communications array and began drafting a priority message to Colonial Command. The Galactic Council was about to discover that their understanding of humanity was not just incomplete, it was dangerously wrong. And when that revelation came, the consequences would reshape the balance of power across the entire galaxy. The message was simple: Council has voted for increased restrictions. They still don't understand what they're dealing with. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. The gloves are coming off. As the quantum transmission streaked across space toward the hidden depths of human colonial space, Director Chen couldn't help but feel a mixture of anticipation and dread. For 50 years, humanity had played by the Council's rules, accepting limitations and restrictions because they chose to avoid conflict. But patience was not the same thing as submission, and underestimation was not the same thing as weakness. The Council was about to learn the difference, and the lesson would be one that the galaxy would never forget. 3 days after the Council's vote, Captain Marcus Rivera stood on the observation deck of the mining platform Prometheus, watching the sunrise over the molten hellscape of Kepler 442b. The planet's surface temperature reached 800 degrees Celsius during the day. Its atmosphere was 70% sulfur compounds, and the gravity was 3 times Earth standard. According to every species assessment in the galactic database, it was completely uninhabitable. Yet here he was, along with 12,000 other human colonists, not just surviving but building thriving communities on a world that should have killed them all within minutes of arrival. Rivera's personal communicator chimed with an encrypted message from Colonial Command. The text was brief, but its implications sent a chill down his spine despite the crushing heat around him. Council vote confirmed. Protocol 7 authorized. Begin Phase 1 immediately. He closed his eyes and allowed himself a moment of regret. For 50 years, humanity had chosen the path of peaceful coexistence, taking whatever scraps the galactic community offered and making the best of them. They had hoped that time and demonstrated competence would eventually earn them a place at the table of galactic civilization. But the Council's latest vote had made it clear that no amount of patience would change their fundamental assessment of humanity's place in the cosmic order. Rivera activated his command console and began sending coded messages to mining platform commanders. To outside observers, the communications would appear to be routine shift schedules and equipment maintenance reports. In reality, they were activation orders for a network that had been 50 years in the making. The first response came from Platform Echo 7, orbiting a gas giant in the Proxima system. Commander Elena Vasquez confirmed receipt of orders and reported that her mining equipment was fully operational and ready for immediate deployment. What the Council didn't know was that Echo 7's mining equipment included kinetic accelerators capable of launching projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, fabrication systems that could construct complex machinery from raw materials in a matter of hours, and defensive arrays that would make most military installations envious. Similar confirmations arrived from platforms across human space, Kepler 438b, where miners worked in radiation levels that should have been instantly lethal, Wolf 1061c, where colonists had learned to thrive in atmospheric pressure that would crush most species. Gliese 667cc, where humans had established underwater cities beneath oceans of liquid methane. Each location had been dismissed by the Council as worthless or too dangerous to develop, but humanity had seen them as opportunities to push beyond every limitation that other species accepted as absolute. Rivera's next communication was to Dr. Janet Kim, the Chief of Colonial Development on New Geneva. Kim had spent 20 years transforming worlds that other species considered uninhabitable into thriving human settlements. Her methods often defied conventional understanding of biology, physics, and engineering, but they worked with a consistency that had made her legendary among colonial administrators. "Janet, we've received authorization for Protocol 7, Rivera said when the secure channel connected. "How quickly can you begin Phase 1 operations?" Dr. Kim's image appeared on the holographic display, her face showing the kind of calm determination that had carried humanity through 5 decades of systematic underestimation. Behind her, Rivera could see the gleaming spires of New Geneva's capital city, a testament to human engineering that had transformed a barren rock into a garden world in less than 30 years. "We've been ready for Phase 1 since the Titan incident," Kim replied. "All colonial worlds have been discreetly outfitted with the necessary infrastructure. We can begin full implementation within 72 hours. The Titan incident was a carefully buried piece of history that demonstrated exactly how dangerous it was to underestimate human capabilities. 3 years ago, a Karathi battle fleet had arrived at Saturn to establish what they called a temporary military observation post. The implication was clear. They were testing humanity's willingness to defend what they considered their home system. What the karate discovered was that humanity had quietly transformed Titan into something far more than a research station. The moon's surface was honeycombed with manufacturing facilities that could produce advanced technology at industrial scales. Its orbit was protected by defensive systems that made even veteran karate warriors nervous, and its human population included engineers and scientists who had spent decades solving problems that other species considered impossible. The confrontation lasted exactly 18 minutes. The karate arrived expecting to intimidate a barely space-capable species into compliance. They left with a new understanding of what humanity was willing to do when threatened directly. The incident was never reported to the Council, and both sides agreed that certain details were better left unexamined. "What about the other colonial worlds?" Rivera asked. "Are they ready for what's coming?" Kim's expression shifted slightly, showing the kind of anticipation that came from years of preparation finally reaching its moment of implementation. "Marcus, the Council has spent 50 years assuming that they understand human limitations. They've watched us mine impossible worlds, terraform hostile environments, and solve engineering challenges that their best scientists said were unsolvable, and they've explained it all away as clever tricks and stubborn persistence." She paused, calling up a holographic display that showed the true scope of human colonial space. What appeared on official council maps as a scattered collection of minor mining operations and research stations was revealed as an interconnected network of advanced civilizations spanning hundreds of star systems. They never asked themselves why a species with no natural advantages would keep pushing into environments where everyone else said we couldn't survive, Kim continued. They never wondered what we were really building out here in the territories they didn't want. They never questioned why we always seemed to make the impossible look routine. The display zoomed in on individual worlds, showing the reality behind humanity's simple mining operations. Kepler 442b wasn't just producing dilithium. It was home to research facilities that had revolutionized material science. Wolf 1061c wasn't just a struggling colony. It was the center of a biotechnology revolution that had redefined what was possible in hostile environments. Gliese 667cc wasn't just an underwater settlement. It was a thriving civilization that had mastered technologies the Council didn't know existed. "The truth is, Marcus, we stopped being the species they thought we were about 20 years ago," Kim said. "We've been politely playing by their rules while building something they never imagined we were capable of, and now they want to tighten those rules even further." Rivera nodded, understanding the full implications of what was about to unfold. "How long do you think it will take them to realize what they're really dealing with?" Phase 1 will make it clear that their assumptions about our technological capabilities are at least 2 decades out of date. Phase 2 will demonstrate that their understanding of human psychology is fundamentally flawed. And by the time we reach Phase 3, she didn't need to finish the thought. Phase 3 would reveal that humanity had spent 50 years preparing for exactly this moment, when the Council's patience with human independence finally reached its breaking point. They had assumed that economic pressure and political isolation would force compliance, just as it had with every other species that had challenged the established order. What they didn't understand was that humans had never been trying to challenge the established order. They had been quietly building something entirely new, something that operated by rules the Council had never encountered before. And when that reality became clear, the balance of galactic power would shift in ways that no one could predict. Rivera's communication array chimed with incoming messages from colony worlds across human space. Each report confirmed the same thing. Mining platforms were transforming into military installations, research facilities were revealing their true capabilities, and entire populations were preparing for a confrontation that had been 50 years in the making. But perhaps the most significant message came from the deepest reaches of colonial space, from settlements so remote that even human authorities sometimes forgot they existed. These were the worlds where humanity had pushed beyond every known limit, where colonists had learned to thrive in environments that existed at the very edge of what physics said was possible. Commander Torres of the Achilles Deep Space Platform sent a simple message: recommend immediate progression to Phase 2 upon Council response. Target identification complete. Awaiting final authorization. Rivera read the message twice, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. Torres commanded humanity's most advanced deep space installation, a platform that existed in the void between galaxies where no other species had ever ventured. The technologies developed there represented the absolute cutting edge of human capability, and they were about to be revealed to a galaxy that still thought of humans as barely competent miners and farmers. Janet, Rivera said, turning back to his conversation with Dr. Kim, when the Council realizes what we've been building out here, they're going to see it as a direct threat to their authority. Good, Kim replied with a smile that carried 50 years of accumulated frustration. Maybe then they'll finally understand that we were never asking for permission. We were being polite. There's a difference. As Rivera prepared to send the final authorization for Phase 1, he reflected on the irony of the situation. The Council had consistently pushed humanity toward the margins of galactic civilization, assigning them to worlds and tasks that no other species wanted. They had done so believing they were keeping humanity safely contained and properly subordinated. Instead, they had inadvertently given humanity exactly what they needed: time, space, and motivation to develop capabilities that operated completely outside the Council's understanding of what was possible. The harsh worlds and impossible tasks had forced human colonists to innovate beyond every conventional limit. The isolation had allowed them to develop technologies without interference or oversight, and the constant dismissal had motivated them to prove that the galaxy's assessment of human potential was catastrophically wrong. The quantum communicator crackled with one final message, this one from Colonial Command itself. Admiral Sarah Chen's voice carried the authority of someone who had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. All stations, this is Command. Protocol 7 is now fully authorized. Begin Phase 1 operations immediately. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity is really capable of. Rivera closed the channel and activated his platform's primary systems. Around him, mining equipment began transforming into something far more sophisticated, revealing capabilities that had been carefully hidden for decades. Across human space, similar transformations were beginning as the most underestimated species in galactic history prepared to demonstrate exactly how dangerous it was to assume that what you saw was all there was. The Council had voted to increase pressure on humanity, believing they were dealing with a minor problem that could be solved through routine administrative measures. They were about to discover that their minor problem was actually the emergence of a new kind of civilization, one that operated by rules the galaxy had never seen before, and the lesson was going to reshape everything. Council Prime Zeth Korai was reviewing routine shipping manifests when his neural crown began processing an alert that would fundamentally change his understanding of galactic politics. The report came from a Zephyrian observation post monitoring the Outer Rim territories where humans had established their scattered mining operations. Prime transmitted Subcommander Velmesh, his mental voice tight with something that might have been concern. We're detecting anomalous energy signatures from 17 human mining platforms simultaneously. The readings don't match any known technological profiles in our databases. Zeth Korai set aside the trade agreements he'd been reviewing and focused his full attention on the incoming data. The Zephyrians had been monitoring galactic civilization for over 3 millennia, and their sensor networks were sensitive enough to detect a single ship's power core from 3 star systems away. If they were seeing something they couldn't identify, it warranted immediate investigation. Elaborate, he commanded, his consciousness interfacing directly with the observation post sensor array. The data stream that flooded his mind should have been routine. Power generation curves, electromagnetic signatures, thermal outputs, and gravitational fluctuations from standard mining equipment. Instead, what he found made him question whether the sensors were malfunctioning. The energy signatures showed power generation levels that exceeded the theoretical maximum output of human fusion technology by several orders of magnitude. The electromagnetic patterns suggested the presence of exotic matter manipulation systems that weren't supposed to exist outside of advanced Zephyrian laboratories. and the gravitational anomalies indicated that the humans were somehow generating localized space-time distortions for purposes that their technology shouldn't have been capable of achieving. Prime, there's more, Velnash continued. We've been monitoring human communication networks as part of standard intelligence gathering operations. In the past 6 hours, we've detected a massive increase in encrypted transmissions using quantum entanglement protocols that exceed our current understanding of human technological development. Zeph Karai's neural crown crackled with additional data as observation posts across Zephyrian space began reporting similar anomalies. The pattern that emerged was impossible to dismiss. Across hundreds of star systems, human installations were simultaneously revealing capabilities that their species assessment said they shouldn't possess. But perhaps most troubling was what the humans weren't doing. Despite the massive technological revelations, there were no threatening moves toward Zephyrian space, no military buildups, no aggressive posturing. The humans were simply existing at a level of technological sophistication that made a mockery of 50 years of galactic intelligence assessments. On the bridge of the Karathi battlecruiser Ironhammer, War Chief Thandor was dealing with his own impossible situation. His ship had been conducting routine patrol operations near the human mining world of Kepler 442b when his sensors began detecting something that challenged everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. War Chief reported his chief tactical officer, "The human mining platform is generating defensive fields that our weapon systems cannot penetrate. Our targeting computers are unable to achieve lock-on, and preliminary impact assessments suggest our standard armaments would be ineffective even if we could target them accurately." The Iron Hammer was a dreadnought-class vessel, armed with particle accelerators that could reduce a small moon to cosmic dust. Its defensive systems were designed to withstand assault from entire enemy fleets, yet the sensor data indicated that the human mining platform possessed defensive capabilities that rendered his ship's weapons completely obsolete. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence indicates that humans barely understand plasma containment technology. War Chief, our intelligence appears to have been incomplete," his tactical officer replied carefully. "The platform is employing defensive systems based on gravitational field manipulation and exotic matter barriers. These technologies are beyond anything in our current arsenal." But what truly disturbed Thandor was the implication of what he was seeing. The Korati had built their galactic position on superior military technology and overwhelming firepower. They had maintained order through the simple principle that nothing could stand against their battle fleets. If humans had quietly developed defensive systems that could neutralize Karathi military superiority, it meant that the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic power structures were no longer valid. Meanwhile, in the depths of Threnody space, Sage Veltaroth was experiencing her own moment of profound realization. At 800 years old, she had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations. She had seen species achieve technological transcendence, watched others destroy themselves through hubris, and observed the countless ways that cosmic evolution shaped the destiny of intelligent life. But she had never seen anything like the data now flowing through Threnody monitoring networks. "Honored Sage," reported her chief analyst, "our long-range observation systems are detecting massive industrial construction in the outer human territories. The scale and sophistication of the operations exceed anything we believed humans were capable of achieving." The holographic displays showed the truth that the Threnodi's patient observation had uncovered. In star systems that the Council considered barely habitable, humans had constructed industrial complexes that dwarfed anything seen in recorded galactic history. Orbital platforms the size of small moons were producing advanced technology at rates that should have required the resources of entire civilizations. Manufacturing facilities were converting raw materials into finished products using processes that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. "How long has this been developing?" Veltaroth asked, her ancient mind struggling to process the implications of what she was seeing. Based on gravitational anomaly patterns, we estimate that major construction began approximately 25 years ago, her analyst replied. However, the technological sophistication suggests development timelines that should have required centuries of research. Belteroth felt something she hadn't experienced in 300 years. Genuine surprise. The humans had accomplished in decades what most species required millennia to achieve. They had somehow compressed the normal evolutionary timeline of technological development into a period so brief that it challenged her understanding of how civilizations developed. But perhaps most concerning was what this meant for the future. If humans could achieve such rapid technological advancement, what would they be capable of in another 50 years? In a century? The question opened possibilities that made even her ancient perspective feel inadequate. On the artificial intelligence networks of the Nexari Collective, Fleet Admiral Kithara was processing data streams that forced her to question the fundamental assumptions underlying her species' approach to technological optimization. The Nexari had achieved perfection through the systematic elimination of inefficiency, creating beings of pure logic and computational power. Yet the data from human space suggested that humans had somehow achieved technological advancement through methods that were completely inefficient, illogical, and contrary to every principle of optimal development. Processing error detected, reported her primary analysis subroutine. Human technological capabilities exceed predicted parameters by margins that suggest systematic intelligence failure. Kithara ran diagnostic checks on her systems, searching for the malfunction that would explain the impossible data, but every analysis confirmed the same conclusion. Humans had somehow developed advanced technology through approaches that her optimization algorithms classified as suboptimal to the point of impossibility. The humans weren't following logical development paths, they weren't building on established technological foundations, they weren't even respecting the basic principles of resource allocation and systematic research. Instead, they seemed to be making intuitive leaps that bypassed entire stages of normal technological evolution. Analysis suggests that human development patterns operate outside established optimization models, her subroutine reported. Recommendation: fundamental revision of species assessment protocols. The revelation was more than just surprising. It was existentially threatening. If humans could achieve technological superiority through methods that defied logical optimization, it suggested that the Nexari's entire approach to civilization might be fundamentally flawed. In the hidden depths of Shadow Syndicate intelligence networks, Director Quenthala was discovering that her species' reputation for knowing everything had encountered its first significant limitation. The Syndicate's information-gathering networks were the most sophisticated in the galaxy, capable of detecting secrets that other species didn't even know they were keeping. But humans had somehow developed and deployed advanced civilization infrastructure without leaving any traces in conventional intelligence channels. Director reported her chief operative, "Our deep penetration assets in human space are reporting that our assessment of human capabilities may have been off by several centuries of technological development. They appear to have been operating at advanced civilization levels while maintaining the appearance of basic industrial capacity." Quenthala reviewed the intelligence reports with growing amazement. Humans had somehow constructed one of the most advanced civilizations in galactic history while making it appear to outside observers that they were barely managing basic space travel. They had developed technologies that exceeded the capabilities of established galactic powers while maintaining the fiction that they were struggling with routine engineering challenges. "How did we miss this?" she asked, her species' pride in information supremacy taking a significant blow. "Analysis suggests that humans have been operating on multiple levels simultaneously," her operative replied. "They maintained minimal capability demonstrations for Council observation while developing advanced infrastructure in territories that other species considered worthless. They essentially built an advanced civilization in the galaxy's blind spots." The implications were staggering. If humans could conceal technological advancement on such a massive scale, what else might they be hiding? And if they had been deliberately maintaining the appearance of technological inferiority for 50 years, what was their ultimate objective? As reports flowed in from across galactic space, a pattern began emerging that challenged every assumption the Council had made about the nature of civilizational development. Humans hadn't just exceeded their species assessment. They had revealed that the entire framework for understanding technological advancement was inadequate for dealing with their approach to innovation. The Council had built their authority on the assumption that they understood the capabilities and limitations of every species under their jurisdiction. They had maintained order through superior technology, overwhelming force, and the accumulated wisdom of millennia. Their policies were based on careful calculations of power balance and threat assessment. But humans had somehow developed outside those calculations entirely. They had achieved advanced civilization status without following any of the established patterns that the Council used to monitor and control galactic development, and they had done so while maintaining peaceful compliance with every Council directive, creating a situation where superior capability coexisted with apparent submission. The revelation forced every Council member to confront a question that had never occurred to them before. What did it mean when a species was far more advanced than they appeared, but showed no interest in using that advancement to challenge the established order? The answer to that question would determine whether the next phase of galactic history would be marked by cooperation or conflict. And as the Council members began to realize the true scope of what they were dealing with, they started to understand that the choice might not be entirely theirs to make. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in absolute secrecy, with representatives arriving through private channels and enhanced security protocols that hadn't been used since the last Galactic War 3,000 years ago. The crystalline chamber that normally hosted routine bureaucratic discussions now hummed with the kind of tension that preceded civilizational turning points. Council Prime Zefkorai materialized at his position through advanced teleportation technology, his neural crown flickering with the barely contained psychic energy of a being pushed beyond his comfort zone. Around him, the other Council members took their places with the grim efficiency of leaders who had just discovered that their understanding of reality was fundamentally flawed. "Before we begin," Zefkorai announced, his mental voice carrying across the chamber with unusual strain, "I want to establish that everything discussed in this session is classified at the highest levels. The information we're about to share has the potential to destabilize galactic civilization if it becomes public knowledge." War Chief Thandor's massive frame shifted restlessly as he activated his personal combat protocols. Even in the secure council chamber, his warrior instincts were screaming that he was in the presence of a threat he didn't understand. "Prime, my battle fleets have encountered human defensive capabilities that exceed our weapons technology by margins we can't quantify. If this intelligence is accurate, we may be facing a first contact situation with a species that's been hiding among us for 50 years. The statement hung in the air like an unexploded weapon. First contact was a term reserved for encounters with completely unknown civilizations, not for species that had been part of the galactic community for decades. But the data streaming in from across Council space suggested that humanity was, in fact, an unknown civilization that had somehow concealed its true nature for half a century. Sage Veltaroth's ancient voice carried the weight of 800 years of accumulated wisdom, but even her vast experience seemed inadequate for the current situation. "The industrial capacity we've observed in human space exceeds the combined output of the three largest galactic civilizations. They've somehow constructed advanced manufacturing infrastructure on a scale that should have taken millennia to develop." Fleet Admiral Kithara's cybernetic systems processed the incoming data with mechanical precision, but her analysis algorithms were producing results that challenged her understanding of technological development. Computational models indicate that human advancement has followed patterns that are theoretically impossible under known laws of civilizational evolution. They appear to have compressed normal development timelines by factors exceeding 10,000%. Intelligence Director Quintala activated a holographic display showing the true scope of what the Syndicate had discovered in recent days. The image that appeared made every council member fall silent with a combination of awe and growing fear. The display showed human space as it actually existed, rather than as it appeared in official council records. Instead of scattered mining operations and struggling colonies, the hologram revealed an interconnected network of advanced civilizations spanning hundreds of star systems. Massive orbital installations orbited worlds that the Council had classified as uninhabitable. Industrial complexes the size of small planets processed resources using technologies that defied conventional understanding. And defensive arrays surrounded human space with capabilities that would make even combined Council forces think twice about aggressive action. This is what humans have built while we thought they were struggling to mine basic resources, Quintala reported. Our intelligence networks estimate that their true technological capability exceeds our own by at least 2 centuries of development. The revelation forced every council member to confront a question that challenged the foundation of their authority. How does a governing body maintain legitimacy when they've fundamentally misunderstood the nature of their most significant constituent population? But perhaps more disturbing was what the humans weren't doing with their advanced capabilities. There were no territorial expansion attempts beyond the systems they'd already settled, no military buildups threatening council space, no diplomatic demands for increased political representation. They were simply existing at a level of technological sophistication that made most council species look primitive by comparison. I don't understand their objective, War Chief Tonador admitted, his warrior's mindset struggling with an enemy that didn't behave like an enemy. If they possess superior technology, why haven't they moved to establish dominance? Every other species with advanced capabilities has sought to expand their territorial control and political influence. Pan Sub-Chancellor Rothman of the Void Confederation leaned forward in his environmental suit, his species' deep space origins making him particularly sensitive to the implications of human expansion patterns. Because they're not playing the same game we are. Look at the systems they've settled. Worlds that we classified as worthless or too dangerous to develop. They're not competing for resources we want. They're creating resources where none should exist. The observation cut to the heart of what made human expansion so unprecedented. Every other galactic civilization had achieved advanced status by competing for existing resources, establishing territorial control, and building power through conquest or economic dominance. But humans had somehow developed advanced civilization by making uninhabitable worlds habitable, creating industrial capacity where none should be possible, and building technological infrastructure that operated independently of galactic trade networks. Zeth Korai accessed the Zephyrian intelligence networks, reviewing 50 years of human interactions with galactic civilization. What he found was a pattern of behavior that had been completely misinterpreted by council analysts. Every request for advanced technology had been politely declined by humans who claimed they weren't ready for such capabilities. Every offer of expanded territorial rights had been turned down by humans who said they preferred to work with what they had. Every attempt to integrate human operations into larger galactic networks had been respectfully refused by humans who said they wanted to develop their own systems first. They weren't being submissive, Zeth Korai realized aloud. They were buying time. Every interaction with council authorities was designed to maintain the appearance of technological inferiority while they developed capabilities that would make council oversight irrelevant. Sage Velteroth's ancient mind reached a conclusion that made her feel young and naive for the first time in centuries. We thought we were managing a minor species that needed guidance and control. In reality, we were being managed by a major species that was choosing to avoid conflict while they established an independent power base. The implications were staggering. If humans had been deliberately maintaining the fiction of technological inferiority for 50 years, it meant they had been operating with strategic patience and long-term planning that exceeded anything seen in galactic history. Most species achieved advanced status and immediately sought to reshape galactic politics to their advantage, but humans had achieved advanced status and continued pretending to be struggling miners and farmers while they built something entirely outside the Council's sphere of influence. Fleet Admiral Kithara's systems ran probability calculations on potential human objectives, but every scenario produced results that defied logical analysis. If their goal was independence, they've already achieved it. If their goal was technological superiority, they've already surpassed us. If their goal was territorial expansion, they've already established control over regions we can't effectively monitor. The question is, what do they want now? A communication request arrived at the council chamber through channels that shouldn't have existed. Quantum entanglement networks that bypassed every security protocol and monitoring system that protected council communications. The transmission was clearly of human origin, but it demonstrated technological capabilities that exceeded even the Council's most advanced communication systems. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, came a calm, professional voice that identified itself as Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Authority. We believe it's time for a more honest conversation about humanity's place in galactic civilization. The council chamber fell silent as every representative realized that their secure emergency session was being monitored by the very species they had been discussing. The humans hadn't just developed advanced technology, they had developed the capability to observe and potentially influence council operations at the highest levels.
We've been monitoring today's discussion, Admiral Chen continued, and we appreciate your growing understanding of the situation.
For 50 years, we've maintained the appearance of limited capability because we believed that gradual integration would be less disruptive to galactic stability than sudden revelation of advanced human civilization. Zethkorai found his mental voice, though his neural crown crackled with the strain of processing the communication through unknown technological channels.
Admiral Chen, your transmission suggests that human capabilities exceed our current assessment by significant margins.
What are your intentions regarding the established galactic order? Our intentions are exactly what they've always been: peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation. The difference is that we're no longer willing to pretend that cooperation requires human submission to council authority. We've developed beyond the need for external governance, but we have no desire to impose our authority on others. War Chief Thanador's combat instincts flared as he processed the implications of the statement. You're declaring independence from council jurisdiction? War Chief Thanador, we declared independence 50 years ago when we chose to develop our own technological and social systems rather than integrate into existing galactic structures. We've simply been polite about it until now. The statement reframed 5 decades of human council relations in a way that made every previous interaction look completely different. Humans hadn't been seeking acceptance into galactic civilization. They'd been building an alternative to it. They hadn't been struggling with the challenges of space colonization. They'd been demonstrating capabilities that exceeded established limitations. They hadn't been accepting council authority. They'd been choosing to avoid conflict while they established technological superiority. Sage Velteroth's ancient wisdom grasped the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. You've been building a post-council civilization while maintaining the appearance of pre-council development. You've essentially skipped the entire process of galactic integration and gone directly to advanced independent status. Sage Velteroth. That's an accurate assessment. We studied galactic history and realized that traditional integration processes would limit human development to patterns established by existing civilizations. We chose to develop independently while maintaining peaceful relations with established powers. Intelligence Director Quintala activated her analysis protocols, searching for tactical advantages in the evolving situation. What guarantees do we have that human independence won't eventually lead to expansionist policies that threaten existing territorial arrangements? Admiral Chen's response carried the kind of patient certainty that came from decades of strategic planning. Director Quintala, humans have no interest in territorial expansion into regions occupied by other species. We've demonstrated the ability to thrive in environments that others consider uninhabitable. The galaxy is vast enough for multiple advanced civilizations to coexist without territorial conflict. The communication ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the council members to process the revelation that their 50-year relationship with humanity had been fundamentally different from what they had believed. They hadn't been governing a minor species, they'd been coexisting with a major power that had chosen to develop outside their influence. As the implications sank in, each council member began to realize that the galaxy had just become a much more complex and interesting place. The balance of power that had maintained stability for millennia was about to shift in ways that no one could predict. and at the center of that shift was a species that had proven capable of achieving the impossible while making it look routine. The age of human hidden development was over. The age of open human civilization was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after Admiral Chen's revelation to the Council, the galaxy was discovering what it meant to coexist with a civilization that operated by entirely different rules than anything seen in recorded history. The transition period had been marked not by conflict, as many had feared, but by a series of demonstrations that redefined what everyone thought was possible. The first public revelation of human capabilities came when the Zephyrian colony world of Neath Prime faced an extinction-level crisis. A massive solar flare had damaged the planet's atmospheric processors, threatening the lives of 12 million colonists. The repair work required technologies that even the Zephyrians didn't possess, and the time frame for completion was measured in weeks rather than the years such projects typically required. Council Prime Zeth Korai stood in his private chambers reviewing the impossible reports that had been streaming in from Neath Prime for the past 72 hours. Human engineering teams had arrived within hours of the crisis declaration, bringing with them technologies that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. They had stabilized the planet's atmosphere using gravitational field generators that shouldn't have existed, repaired damaged infrastructure with self-assembling materials that exceeded anything in Zephyrian archives, and restored full planetary function in a time frame that made veteran engineers question their understanding of basic physics. Prime, reported Subcommander Velnash, his mental voice tight with something between awe and concern. Human engineering teams have completed atmospheric restoration ahead of all projected timelines. Colonial authorities report that planetary conditions are now superior to pre-crisis baselines. Zeth Korai processed the implications with growing amazement. The humans hadn't just solved the crisis, they had improved upon the original systems, leaving Neath Prime with atmospheric processors that were more advanced than anything the Zephyrians had ever constructed. And they had done so as a gesture of assistance, asking for nothing in return except the opportunity to help. Did they explain how their technology works? Zeth Korai asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. They offered to share technical specifications, Prime. Our engineers are struggling to comprehend the underlying principles. The humans appear to have solved fundamental problems in gravitational manipulation that our scientists didn't realize were solvable. Similar reports were arriving from across galactic space as humans began openly demonstrating capabilities that had been hidden for decades. The Karate discovered that human defensive installations could not only neutralize their weapons but could actually redirect hostile energy into their own power grids, turning attacks into fuel for their defensive systems. The Threnodai learned that human manufacturing could produce materials with properties that exceeded anything in their extensive databases. The Nexari found that human computing systems operated on principles that their optimization algorithms classified as impossible but undeniably effective. But perhaps most significant was what happened when War Chief Tainador decided to test human military capabilities through direct confrontation. His battle fleet arrived at the human system of Wolf 1061 with the intention of establishing what he called a demonstration of council authority. What he encountered forced him to completely reassess his understanding of military power. The human response wasn't a battle in any sense that the Karate understood warfare. Instead, human defensive systems simply negated the Karate fleet's ability to function as military units. Weapon systems shut down not because they were damaged, but because the space around them no longer supported the physical processes necessary for their operation. Navigation systems stopped working not because they were jammed, but because human technology was somehow editing the gravitational fields that the systems used for positioning. Even basic ship functions began failing as human defensive networks demonstrated the ability to selectively modify the fundamental forces that kept starships operational. War Chief reported his chief tactical officer, human defensive systems appear to be capable of manipulating the basic laws of physics within localized regions of space. Our weapons are not being destroyed or disabled, they are being rendered impossible to operate by alterations to local reality. Thaindor stared at the tactical displays showing his powerful battle fleet reduced to the technological equivalent of floating scrap metal within minutes of entering human space. The humans had neutralized his ships without firing a single weapon, without causing any casualties, and without displaying any of the aggressive behavior that typically characterized military encounters. "Are they attacking us?" he asked, trying to understand a form of conflict that didn't involve violence or destruction. "Negative, War Chief. Analysis suggests they're demonstrating that our presence in their space is contingent upon their permission. They can allow our systems to function normally, or they can prevent our systems from functioning at all. The choice appears to be entirely theirs." The message was clear. Human military capability wasn't based on superior weapons or stronger defenses. It was based on the ability to control the fundamental forces that made other technologies possible. They didn't need to destroy enemy fleets, they could simply make enemy fleets incapable of functioning as military units. Thaindor ordered his fleet to withdraw, but not before receiving a communication from the human colony administrator on Wolf 1061. The message was polite, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. "War Chief Thaindor, your fleet is welcome to remain in our space as guests, but uninvited military demonstrations are not conducive to peaceful relations. We hope this misunderstanding can be resolved through diplomatic channels." The revelation that humans could casually neutralize the galaxy's most powerful military forces while maintaining the fiction that it was a misunderstanding sent shockwaves through every government in council space. But what truly disturbed military analysts was the realization that humans had demonstrated defensive capabilities without revealing offensive ones. If they could manipulate local reality for defensive purposes, what would their offensive capabilities look like? The answer came not through military demonstration, but through an offer that redefined the concept of galactic cooperation. Admiral Chen requested a formal meeting with the full council to discuss what she termed collaborative development opportunities. The meeting took place on a neutral station, but even the choice of venue demonstrated human technological superiority. They transported the entire council assembly to a location that existed outside normal space-time, using technology that made teleportation look primitive by comparison. "Honorable Council members," Admiral Chen began, "humanity has spent 50 years developing independently because we believed that integration into existing galactic structures would limit our potential for innovation. We've now reached a point where continued isolation serves no constructive purpose." She activated a holographic display that showed the true scope of human space, but this time the image included projections of what human civilization could become with full galactic cooperation. The possibilities were staggering. Terraforming technologies that could transform barren worlds into garden paradises within years rather than millennia. Manufacturing systems that could produce unlimited quantities of advanced technology using nothing but raw materials and energy. Transportation networks that could connect every inhabited world in the galaxy through instantaneous travel, and research capabilities that could solve fundamental problems in physics, biology, and consciousness itself. "We're offering full technological cooperation with any civilization that's interested in collaborative development," Chen continued. "Human advancement has reached the point where we can share our capabilities without compromising our security or independence." Sage Velteroth was the first to grasp the full implications of the offer. "You're proposing to share advanced technology without requiring political integration or territorial concessions?" "Exactly, Sage Velteroth. We've learned that innovation flourishes when civilizations maintain their independence while cooperating on projects of mutual interest. We have no desire to govern other species, but we're very interested in collaborating with them." Fleet Admiral Kithera's cybernetic systems processed the proposal through every optimization algorithm in her database. The results were unprecedented. Unlimited access to advanced technology without political subordination, collaborative research without loss of cultural autonomy, and economic cooperation without territorial integration. It was everything that galactic civilizations had been trying to achieve through conquest and political dominance. offered freely through voluntary cooperation. What guarantees do we have that human technological superiority won't eventually lead to demands for political control? Intelligence Director Quinthala asked, her species' paranoia making her suspicious of any offer that seemed too good to be true. Admiral Chen smiled with the kind of patient confidence that came from decades of preparation for exactly this question. Director Quinthala, humans have already demonstrated technological superiority without making demands for political control. We've had the capability to dominate galactic civilization for at least 20 years. The fact that we're offering cooperation instead of demanding submission should answer your question about our long-term intentions. The truth was undeniable. Humans had possessed the capability to reshape galactic civilization according to their preferences for decades. Instead, they had chosen to develop independently while maintaining peaceful relations with everyone else. They had solved fundamental technological challenges while other species struggled with routine engineering problems. They had built advanced civilization infrastructure while maintaining the fiction that they were barely competent miners and farmers. And now they were offering to share the benefits of their advancement through voluntary cooperation rather than imposed authority. Council Prime Zeth Korai found himself in the unprecedented position of representing a governing body that had been surpassed by one of its own constituents. Admiral Chen, if we accept your offer of technological cooperation, what happens to existing galactic governmental structures? Prime Zeth Korai, existing structures continue operating exactly as they have for millennia. We're simply establishing that humanity operates outside Council jurisdiction while remaining committed to peaceful coexistence and mutual cooperation. The proposal was revolutionary in its simplicity. The galaxy could maintain its existing political structures while gaining access to technological capabilities that would transform every aspect of civilization. Humans weren't seeking to replace the Council, they were offering to work alongside it as an independent partner rather than a subordinate member. Over the following months, the new arrangement began reshaping galactic civilization in ways that exceeded everyone's expectations. Zephyrian scientists gained access to human research that advanced their understanding of consciousness and reality manipulation by centuries. Korati engineers learned construction techniques that allowed them to build defensive installations that could protect entire star systems. Threnati philosophers discovered new perspectives on the nature of existence that came from human experiences in manipulating fundamental forces. Nexari programmers found that collaboration with human intuitive problem-solving produced results that exceeded pure logical optimization. But perhaps most significantly, the galaxy discovered that competition between civilizations wasn't the only path to advancement. Human cooperation protocols demonstrated that collaborative development could produce innovations that no single species could achieve independently. When Zephyrian psychic abilities combined with human engineering, the results were technologies that neither species could have developed alone. When Korathi military expertise merged with human defensive capabilities, the outcome was security systems that redefined the concept of protection. The transformation wasn't without its challenges. Many species struggled to adapt to cooperative relationships after millennia of competitive interaction. Some governments worried that technological cooperation would undermine their authority over their own populations. Others feared that human capabilities were advancing so rapidly that collaboration would become subordination by default. But as the benefits of the new arrangement became clear, opposition faded in favor of pragmatic acceptance. Worlds that had struggled with environmental challenges for centuries were terraformed into paradises within months. Civilizations that had been limited by resource scarcity gained access to manufacturing technologies that made scarcity irrelevant. Species that had been isolated by distance found themselves connected through transportation networks that made the galaxy feel small and intimate. 1 year after the revelation of human capabilities, Council Prime Zeth Korai stood in his chambers reviewing reports from across galactic space. Every indicator showed unprecedented levels of technological advancement, economic prosperity, and social stability. Conflicts between species had decreased to their lowest levels in recorded history. Scientific advancement was proceeding at rates that made previous centuries look stagnant. and for the first time in millennia, every major civilization was actively collaborating rather than competing for resources and territory. Subcommander Velnash Zeth-Korai transmitted to his intelligence chief, "What is your assessment of the current galactic situation?" Prime, analysis indicates that human cooperation has fundamentally altered the trajectory of galactic civilization. Previous models based on competitive resource allocation and territorial expansion have been superseded by collaborative development protocols that produce superior outcomes for all participants. Understanding that they were witnessing the emergence of something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization advanced enough to lead but wise enough to cooperate, powerful enough to dominate but patient enough to share, and innovative enough to solve problems that others considered. The galaxy had discovered that its most underestimated species was also its most transformative, and as human civilization continued its impossible trajectory of advancement while maintaining its commitment to peaceful cooperation, everyone began to realize that they weren't just witnessing the revelation of hidden capabilities, they were participating in the emergence of a new kind of galactic order that operated by rules no one had imagined were possible. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it meant to be truly apex, not by conquering everything in sight, but by making everything better than it was before. And in doing so, they had redefined what it meant to be powerful, advanced, and civilized in a universe where cooperation was proving more effective than competition, and where the greatest strength was knowing when not to use force at all. The moment the Council discovered humanity's hidden apex instinct, HFY Story,